Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today I want to talk about a graphic novel that I read, one that is about genies or Jinn, Egypt, and troubling relationships between two hostile countries. I am referring to Cairo by Willow Wilson and M.K. Perker. For those who don't know, I'm not really sure who M.K. Perker is. They did the art in this, but it's pretty wonderful art, although I do have a few problems with it. But as for Willow Wilson, Willow Wilson, I think Gwendolyn Willow Wilson is her name. She is a writer, comic book writer, novels, essays, various stuff like that, as well as an activist for Middle Eastern refugees. She's known for writing, again, she's known for writing comic books, Batman and stuff, but one thing I was surprised to find is that she is responsible for Kamala Khan, that version of Miss Marvel, which was well received by the comic book community, I believe, and there's also the fact that there's representation. She seems to be very interested in Islamic, Middle Eastern, Arabic communities. In particular, she although she is a white American woman, she did convert to Islam a while back, which I think is an interesting tidbit about her. So, pretty interesting career. I managed to find us at my local library. Don't forget to patronize your local libraries. And I would be interested in, finding out more about Wilson in the future. So maybe look out for future comic books written by her. But without further ado, let's talk about Cairo, this graphic novel. I will do a little summary, a little analysis, and we will move on from there. So Cairo focuses on a group of important characters. There's no one main character. There's Ashraf, who smuggles marijuana between Egypt and Israel, although he's looking to get out of that game because it's pretty dangerous, and he's moved on to just selling stolen items and whatnot. There's also Kate, who is a college student from Orange County who decides to come to Egypt and talk with a newspaper dude who she respects, and that newspaper dude is Ali, who's a bit unhappy that his newspaper is being censored, and he's feeling a bit uninspired at the moment in his work. There's also Tova, who is a special forces agent who was caught in an ambush near the Israeli border, and so she's made her way to Cairo in an effort to find someone who can smuggle her over the border, and she's looking for Ashraf. There's also Sahid, who bought a stolen hookah from Ashraf, and so he's just what appears to be a visiting student. Although through the story we later learn that he is sort of a freedom fighter, cyber terrorist, working against the Israeli government in order to help the people of Lebanon. And although he's strongly discouraged by the characters he meets along the way as they promote peace over such extreme actions. Anyway, the plot is kickstarted when Ashraf steals a hookah, sort of a drug smoking device of some sort. I'm not really familiar with hookahs, so he steals it from a sort of local kingpin named Nar, who urges Azref to give it back with all due speed. And Nar ends up kidnapping Kate and Ali, Ali being Azref's friend, and Kate was around Ali at the time, so she gets kidnapped too, in an effort to convince him to get the hookah back. Unfortunately, Azref sold it to Sahid, and so he has to track down Sahid. Tova approaches Azref to get him to smuggle her back into Israel, but he instead recruits her to help out with this endeavor first, as it's important that he finds the hookah. So Sahid interacts with the hookah, and as it turns out, there is a genie inside the hookah, a Jinn, as it's called in this story. Shams is his name, and so he escapes from Nar's men through the town of Cairo, and they make their way to the desert, where they encounter another magical being who gives Sahid a sword. Although Jinn, the Shams, promotes peace for some reason, so it's very confusing about what exactly Shams wants Sahid to do throughout the story, and Sahid even kills a demon that's convincing him to just give up and leave everyone behind, but Sahid is determined to keep going. Kate and Ali are taken to the pyramids, where they are held hostage until Azref manages to find the hookah that he stole. Luckily, they manage to, with the help of Shams, the Jinn, they manage to maneuver their way through the pyramids, and they make their way to the Under Nile, the mystical river that is underneath the Nile River. And there they encounter the evil Jinn, Iblis, who is Sham's rival in this story. The evil Jinn tries to convince Kate and Ali to fight one another, sort of turn them against each other for nefarious means. But Shams intervenes and convinces them not to fight it out and to actually work together. So Azref ends up finding Sahid later in the story and demands the hookah back, but Shams and Sahid note that they have to use it to stop Nar from taking control of not only the Jinn, but also the word East, which I think is something like the word of God. Whoever controls the word East controls, the eastern half of the globe, and so nobody wants Nar to have that. Fortunately, during the hubbub and confusion, Azref accidentally shoots Sahid, and Jen says that Azref has to fix this or he's going to kill him later. Shams, the Jinn, takes Sahid to the Under Nile, where he heals him in a holy river, and they manage to make their way to a local museum back in Cairo, where everyone kind of shows up, all the main characters, and Nar, who is demanding the magical box. So Nar actually captures Shams, and the rest of the characters leave at first, but they eventually decide that they can't leave the genie behind or let Nar win, and so they assault the museum with guns and various weaponry and end up killing some of Nar's men in the process. Sahid confronts Nar with Shams, the Jinn, and unfortunately Sahid is shot, but Shams gives him some of his powers before dying, and Sahid becomes a half Jinn, half human sort of creature, and ends up giving Nar a heart attack, and he dies. The story then ends at that point with Kate and Ali working on the newspaper that she now has a job at. They're still censored, but Ali has a better outlook on the censorship. Azref and Tova fall in love despite being on the opposite ends, with Tova being Israeli and Azref being from one of the countries that the Israelis are oppressing at any given time. And Sahid becomes a wandering mystic working alongside Azref, trying to figure out how to best help people and fulfill the Shams' ultimate goal for him. So it ends on a bit of a high note there. In terms of analysis, there is a little bit to talk about with this story. The first thing that I noticed is there's a lot of intertwining of Jewish and Arabic cultures, particularly introducing a lot of ideas such as the Jinn, demons, the underworld, the word of God, demons. But in this version of demons, they're instead of being physical harm. Beings of physical harm, they're more mentally harmful. They instigate you to do evil deeds or something like that. With one of the demons just telling Sahid to submit, to quit, to walk away, showing that words have power over physical actions a lot of the time. And even the evil Jinn Iblis, he just tries to speak to Kate and Ali and convince them to turn on one another. He doesn't actually do anything physical to get them to hurt one another. He just whispers their insecurities to one another, which I like. It's a different perception of demons and genies and jinn, stuff like that. I do like this intertwining of Jewish and Arabic cultures. It does present a picture where Wilson is trying to argue for peace between nations, showing that these nations can work together to achieve a common goal through non-violent means. But I do like how she doesn't simply gloss over the issues that are prevalent there with the Israelis setting up resettlement camps and just taking over territories, and the Arabic cultures being very mistrustful of Israel in general. Not afraid to highlight both sides of the issue here. I like that, but she ultimately says these two countries need to work towards peace, and she says that through the characters of Tova and Ashraf, making sure to highlight that they can work together and achieve a common goal. It doesn't have to simply be perpetual war between the two entities there. However, there are a lot of mixed messages in this particular graphic novel. Particularly, Wilson advocates for peaceful methods. Even the Shams, the Jinn, advocates for non-violent means to achieve your goals, and it seems like the other characters are trying to advocate for that too. But you get mixed messages in the story, with Sahid being given a sword, and so if you're advocating for peaceful methods, what exactly are you supposed to do with that sword? You can't exactly use it peaceably. It's always gonna be used to hurt somebody. And then Shams tells the others to go home, and then when they come back, they use a bunch of assault rifles. And I really thought Wilson was setting it up so there'd be some sort of creative solution that didn't rely on violence to solve the problem. But in the end, that's exactly what it relies on. Sahid, when he becomes half Jinn, he gives Nar a heart attack. And I thought there'd be a much more creative way of solving the problem, but it really seems like it goes against the progression of the story, the message that's being sent. And at times it does feel a little too black and white, with one character noting that in the past and in the original sources of the holy text, things were a lot more gray. They weren't black and white, but the story is very black and white. You have Nar, a very clear evil kingpin who wants to use the Jinn for evil purposes, and you have these other characters who have their problems, but they're very clearly the heroes of the story. And so it's very black and white, despite the fact that I think Wilson was trying to go for a much more gray kind of route or something like that. I don't think it hurts the story too much, but it does send a lot of muddled messages. I don't think it's clear that I don't think it's clear what Wilson is trying to say, and I don't even think that she knew herself where she was going with this particular story. It's an interesting action story, but I don't think there's much below it that's holding it up beyond the messages of peace and the intertwining of the specific cultures. And the last thing I want to talk about in this story is the unusual art. I do like the art. It's in black and white, and a lot of the characters are depicted in a non-racist way, as I know a lot of stories about Jewish or Middle Eastern characters rely on those caricatures of Middle Eastern individuals, and that can come off as very racist or like the artist isn't even really trying, and for the most part the main characters in the story are wonderfully depicted, but some of the villains are depicted in what I want to say is like historically racist kind of manner. The demons and the evil Jinn and Nar in particular look like someone's trying to express a racist idea. I'll put the pictures up around here somewhere, but it really seems like they're trying to paint an ugly monster. But at the same time, they're also relying on those historical racist caricatures of Middle Eastern characters, and so I'm getting mixed messages here. It seems like Wilson and the artist didn't really communicate with one another about how these specific characters would look, because you get the sort of mixed messages where you're trying to humanize these characters of the Middle East, but at the same time you sort of get racist or ugly depictions. It just stood out to me, and I had to pause and ask, like, is this racist? Am I seeing more? Feel free to tell me in the comments if you think this might be racist in some form or manner. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Cairo by Gwendolyn Willow Wilson. A pretty interesting graphic novel. I enjoyed it, although there are a number of problems, and I don't think I can really get over the mixed messages and how sort of empty this story left me feeling. I guess I would recommend this to you out there. It is an interesting story, I will say. Like, all the characters are fascinating. So I guess I do recommend it to you out there. But if you're looking for something a little deeper, a more in-depth exploration in your graphic novels, this is probably skippable. If you read this before, or you want to say something about my review here, feel free to comment below. I would love to hear from you and have a discussion about everything that you can find in Cairo. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about Wilson and this specific graphic novel. And in the meantime, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and genie travels. Farewell.